Now you join me here in my in my hovel of a studio because I'm in experimenting mode, and I thought I'd share with you some of the processes by which I make my noises. Now, if we consider Mike Kerr of Royal Blood, he made his bass guitar sound like a lead guitar because he had all sorts of effects and all sorts of things which gave him that sound. Really inspiring, because actually it doesn't really matter things like the order of your effects, it's up to you. But I've got a few things here which enable me to play my guitar with a bass line that's basically in unison. Now, on the other camera here, you'll see a load of pedals here. We've got the SYB-5 here, which is my bass synth. It's got two outputs. The top one there is running to a dynamic wah pedal, which then goes to my guitar amp, which is that green box on the top here. There we go, that one. And then the other output goes into my big muff pedal, the electro harmonics, and then goes out into my talk box, or it goes to my bass amp, which is there. You're thinking, why has he got all these noises? Why doesn't he just play the thing? Well, yeah, of course, getting tone is really important. And the irony is that the SYB-5, this sampler pedal, the bass synthesizer pedal that I've got here, will only work properly if your tone is really strong on the guitar. Some people say, oh, I can't get this thing to trigger properly, or da, da, da. It's about getting a really good balanced tone from the word go. So, and then I'm recording the bass amp and the guitar amp to my computer. There you can see all the tracks that are in record. So let's put the camera down and do some playing. So I've got my Strat set to neck pickup. So the bass sound is being generated by the guitar. It's just the octave down setting on the SYB-5. I've got setting number 5 at the moment, which is one of the octave down versions. So if I disconnect the guitar amp, I've also got a Boss expression pedal which is going into the side of the SYB-5, which enables me to get that sort of wah effect. Now, the range on the bass synthesizer is pretty good. It'll only go up to C though, the 8th fret on the E string, before it then can't resolve and can't play back. But that enables you to get some pretty cool sounds. If we were, for example, to, you know, that Labby Cifra tune, I Got the... Yeah. If you're playing electric guitar with a plectrum, I do recommend these fat plectrums for getting the real tone into the bass synth box. If you play with a sort of thinner plectrum and a slightly quieter sound, sometimes that bass synth pedal won't resolve the note that you're trying to give it, and therefore it's sort of it's in I don't know what to do mode. So we've also got the talk box here. I've set the wet output of the bass synth onto this. It does have rather limited usage, but we're in experimentation mode. That's what it's about. You know, it's not about sort of, oh yes, you've got to put this before this, before this, before this. You know, the electric guitar, this is, you know, 65-year-old design now, and it's fantastic. Nobody's taking away from that. But let's be frank, all of this stuff has to be used in a creative way to get new sounds. Granted, they might be horrible sounds, but they're new all the same. Now I can make that bass sound a bit dirtier by switching the big muff pedal on. also are on the guitar side. Now the bass synth pedal did capture all of those notes, so you've just got to be very deliberate with your notes. You can play quite fast scales. You can experiment putting a compressor before the bass synth, but it might re-trigger. Instead of giving you that definite attack, because one thing that a compressor does is it does lower the attack of the sound if you're not careful, and that's kind of the enemy of the bass synth. So if you're a bass player and you've got a gig, why not take a guitar and play the bass line on it with the bass synth, and then you've got an extra instrument, so you're essentially two people in a band. Now, the bass synth won't like chords. It doesn't respond to chords. So if you're going to play something that's got chords in, let's say reggae, for example, you're going to have to get handy at switching the bass synth pedal on and off very quickly. The guitar sound, if I switch the bass synth pedal off, it just passes that guitar signal straight through. That's quite handy. But if I try and play a chord, doesn't really work. So if I'm going, it's not ideal, but if you're a pretty dab hand at that, you could always have a volume pedal on the output, but then you end up with 58 expression pedals on your wah-wah board. And I've only got 2 feet. I know I'm from North Dorset, but I still only have 2 feet. So it's a bit tricky to sort of manage everything. As you can see with my pedal board that I showed you just now, if I just press go on the other video camera again, so this is the handheld one, you can see it's just a bit of a mess. I've got an old Marshall Governor pedal. I don't like that very much. It's all right. EBS Octaver, that's fine. It's not plugged in. But once I've worked this out, excuse the glitter, that was New Year's Eve 2009, I think. Once I've got it all worked out, I can plumb it all in on the board and make it work for my new setup. But of course, it's worth gigging these setups first so that you can really get into the sort of nitty-gritty of what your sound is going to be. So there we go. There's a little bit of an experiment. We've got to think Mike Kerr, us guitarists and bass players, so that we can break new boundaries and create new sounds. There are lots of awful sounds, but there are some very nice ones waiting to be discovered.